Hey, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Forward Deployed podcast. I'm Sean Feeney, a senior product marketing manager on the Microsoft Power Platform and Copilot Studio team, and I am joined by.
I'm Wendy Haddad. I'm a senior customer experience program manager on the Planner team, and I am joined by.
For years I have wondered about this guest whose last name is Cooper. First name is not Winnie, however. Emma, how are you? Welcome to the podcast. Welcome back, Emma Cooper.
Thank you, Ken. What a good intro.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.
So,
Winnie,
Emma, you are a repeat guest. So, but it's been a little while, and you've been working on some really, really cool things. So, could you help us understand your role at Microsoft, as well as what is specifically App Builder, which we just announced, and kind of what is the problem it's trying to solve?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Indra said, I'm Emma Cooper. I'm a principal product manager at Microsoft. That means that my main job is working with our customers and our data and feedback and figuring out what we should build and working with our engineers on building that and making sure that it's something that people love and enjoy and solves real problems. So that's what I do day to day. And what I've been working on the last while, as you mentioned, is App Builder. So App Builder is a new agent in M365 Copilot. So much like there's other agents in Copilot, like you have researcher, you have analyst, there's a bunch of ways you could have custom agents inside of Copilot as well. App Builder is another one in that list. And what App Builder can do, as the name suggests, is build apps. And it's really meant for enabling everyday workers and anyone who can, access Copilot to be able to go and generate applications that, that are prototypes, that are used for personal and team productivity, or, anything like games or presentations, or there's a lot of different flexibility with what you could build.
Emma, we are fresh off the Power Platform conference, and we had a lot of questions about governance and security. So let's just get the elephant out the room and just get this out the way. How is it governed? Is it intrinsically governed? Like, what are the controls? Can we just knock that
Yeah,
out?
absolutely. So I think one of the things when building App Builder is that we wanted it to be intrinsically governed. We wanted to use existing platforms and with that had existing controls and policies and so on to make sure that, while this is something that lots of people can, go, oh wow, like I can build anything. Like we help, lessen the heartache of admins of like, oh wow, people can build anything, right? So there's a couple things we've done on that front. And I think I'll talk about it in one, like how people access it and how that's managed. And then we can talk about, managing the assets itself and the capabilities of it. And then we can talk about the data. Um, so one, in the Microsoft Admin Center, for all of your list of agents, you are able to turn those, on, off, or only to a subset of people or in a user group. And so the App Builder agent also is in that list, and you're able to configure those options. One thing to note is that App Builder released in Frontier, which is the preview program for Copilot. And so Frontier is actually an opt-in program. So admins will have to go and enable users to be able to use those Frontier early adoption features anyway. So to get that elephant out of the room, it's not, how do I turn it off? In this case, you have to go turn it on. So that's one. Two, in terms of, okay, all these apps that are created, what can they do and how are they managed? Well, these applications are intentionally restricted to only currently use SharePoint data. Full stop. Period. So no external like custom APIs, no other kind of access to data. Really kind of at the beginning limiting what is available for everyday workers to go and build with, because we want to balance enabling personal and team productivity scenarios, but also making sure that lots of folks can't get themselves into trouble by working with a lot of different data sources. So I think that helps as well, just from like positioning what it can do. Um, and all of those applications that get created, they are able to be seen in the inventory in the Power Platform Admin Center, alongside any other applications that have been created. And so all of the App Builder apps are in a separate, not default designated environment, enabling you to see that full list and manage things like if somebody leaves the organization and you really want to still have access, adding another owner, deleting anything, having that inventory enables all those common scenarios. And on the third aspect of data access, we mentioned, okay, it connects to SharePoint data. Uh, how that works is that, all right, apps like to have backing data so you can, share them with people and everyone can update. If you have an inventory, it'd be great to have a list of inventory everyone can add to. The way that App Builder does that is it creates a SharePoint site with SharePoint lists inside of it. And it's a regular SharePoint site. It adheres to all the existing policies that are at play in your tenant. If people don't have permission to make sites, they won't be able to, and the memory or all the data will just be in memory. If you have any policies around retention of that data or data sensitivity or any of those other things, it's a standard SharePoint list or SharePoint site and SharePoint lists, and so all those data policies will apply. So kind of from all fronts, trying to embrace, the legacy of Microsoft in, governance and trust and taking advantage of the full ecosystem to make sure that this is something that can be managed.
Thank you, Emma. I just want to first off, thank you for level setting us on the governance, but I do want to revisit one aspect. You mentioned that there's visibility of these apps that are created within Power Platform Admin Center in inventory. But in Power Platform Admin Center, we've got the concept of environments, right? And so it historically had the issue of all items going into the default environment. And Ken has put out some amazing things for environment strategy, like routing, groups, and rules. Can you just say, hey, dude, these things don't exist in the default environment so we can avoid any questions and make my job in marketing so much easier, please?
Yes, to be very clear, these apps don't go in the default environment.
Clip that, put that everywhere.
Yes,
That's
everyone
fantastic.
should be cheering and
Yeah,
everything for Emma.
There's applause.
Yeah, we'll cut that in. But so thank you for that. I really appreciate it. One question I do want to ask though is you mentioned like, hey, this is for everybody. You can go in, you can start building these apps. The admin would go on and enable this in the Microsoft Admin Center. How do I know? Like, if I'm a maker or if I'm building an app or I'm curious about this, like, how do I know what's available to me?
So this it's in M365 Copilot. So there's kind of, inherent prerequisite in you having access to Copilot in that statement. And so where you can go and find, all of the agents that you have access to is in the agent store in M365 Copilot. So if you go to the agent store there, you should be able to see App Builder in the Built by Microsoft list, and explore any other agents that you would be interested in.
It's kind of refreshing that we led with governance because oftentimes we get into it. We're holding Ken back on all of his questions. It's not scare the guests. So thank you for being so patient with us, Emma. But I also want to think about quality because I think that inherently there can be fear of not just obviously the governance and security, but are end users really building good things, or is this a shaky kind of dependency here in terms of what you're building? So could you talk about what guidelines or guardrails that you put in place, if especially if an agent is building it for you? How can I trust in the quality of what the agent is building?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the big challenges of the age. And I think one of the we do a lot of work on this front for the quality of the app that gets created. And I think is it okay if I talk a little how the agent works? Because I think
Please too.
that'll
Yes,
help
that would be really helpful.
adjust. So how the agent works, there's basically a couple of things. So one, like we kind of take the user intent and the user can express their intent in natural language, right? Just tell you what type of app you want or make it blue or whatever. You can also include work content. So if you had any Word docs or loops or meeting transcripts, you can also include that. So we take all that input and we have the agent has a couple of things that it does. So one, it creates kind of a mini product requirements document or a PRD for for those in the biz. And that basically defines all of the requirements for what it needs to do to accomplish basically what it was asked to do. It also makes itself a little task list as a result of like, oh, well, I should, go code that. I'm going to have to validate this and I'll need to set up that data. It makes itself a little task list to do that. And then it actually has, the app code as a reference, whether it's created something already, because you can, ask it to do stuff multiple times. It leverages a suite of tools to do all those tasks and to meet the requirements. And this is where, it's really interesting because we have a bunch of tools to help with that quality item. So one is we have tools for doing data schema and for styling and for, checking and validating the app, right? We actually, we'll try and run and see like, all right, is there an error in the app? If so, all right, well, I got to fix that. And so it's all inherently indeterministic because it's flexible as to what people ask for. And it can also use the tools available to it, to accomplish the task and has other tools, to verify that it's done a good job. So that's kind of like inherent to the agent itself. We've
Mhm.
equipped it to be able to do the tasks that people ask for. Um, I think I what else will help is like how we as Microsoft measure our quality. I think that is also something that's interesting. So in the world of AI, your test set is now called like evaluations,
Evals. Yep.
and evals for short. And so what we at Microsoft do is we have a huge test set of all of the different prompts and ideas for applications that have been built. And we make sure that all of these, we run these on all of the prompts and everything for App Builder, and we score them according to a couple different aspects. So one, task adherency. Did it do the tasks that the app should do, right? Like if you're building an expense tracker app, the tasks that should probably be able to be done in that app is add a new expense, see a existing list of expenses, stuff like that. And so we score, did it do what it was asked to do? We also scored, all right, how does it look visually? Does it look nice? Is it consistent? Did it use, patterns that are, very intuitive for somebody who would be using it? And then we also score, performance and, is it slow? Did it build something that's, having a lot of challenges that way? And then we have an ultimate blocker around like safety and security and policies. Microsoft has done a ton of work in Copilot with responsible AI and ethics, and preventing misuse of Copilot. And because we're an agent in Copilot, we adapt a lot of those kind of same guardrails, practices, defenses, in addition to ones on our end to make sure that those parts are safe. And so all of those things are graded and scored on the Microsoft side with our, test set. And based on what we, people sending us feedback and what we see people building in the wild, we can go back and update our test set to make sure that it's matching, what people are using it for, and make sure we meet the quality bar, both with the agent having the right tools to be able to build good things, and also making sure that as we make changes, it's always building good things, and we're making sure that the quality is increasing over time as we make changes.
So I do think it is really important to clarify. We should dig in here. You mentioned kind of our test set and updating our test set. Are we training on user data?
No, absolutely not. And good for calling that out specifically. So we have our separate test set that, myself and others like, and, public test sets that we use. The way that we would update that from customers is from, being manually shared prompts, seeing stuff on the internet, adapting, if we introduce new capabilities for, or different tools in our test set for it to do different things, then we would manually update our, test set to make sure we cover those aspects.
Yeah, and also I'll add on to that because that's my day job a lot of times is meeting with customers and understanding like what are the use cases and really understanding the problems that are solved and those influence those test sets that help us measure what we're building and quality up front. It's a huge area. And so it's really interesting to hear how you're taking that, but specifically empowering the user with this in the app builder agent. So very, very cool. And then before I yield to the mic, I have one more question. You mentioned that that it's creating like its own test list, and you also mentioned that it's creating like this kind of mini product doc. Just for transparency to the user, is the user able to see that in real time or go back and understand the logic of how this app was built, both for learning and then again that quality control question back to what we were asking before?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the app builder agent, it helps replay back its thoughts to you around what it's doing and so on. So you could actually go in and see it'll be like, oh, like, I'm currently thinking up what your app should do and what it should be. I'm writing out the requirements, I'm coding up, your first homepage. I'm validating that, it should match the designs for what should be here and that kind of stuff. So it communicates very clearly what it's doing to you, and you can see that for, the first time you've interacted with it, or if you're making follow-up edits, it'll tell you what it's doing. So that's one. Right now in the App Builder agent, we don't expose the code to users. It's meant to be very prompt to experience. So you are only working in natural language. For those that want to work with the code directly and follow up on those pieces, Power Platform and other tools are probably the best option for that. Right now, we don't expose the requirements doc, but that is, feedback we've heard already, and so we'll probably think about a nice way of doing that over time.
It's finally my turn right here.
He's waiting so long.
So many questions.
So many. I now have three questions. Um, the first,
Sorry, Sean.
the first is why. So, why would I want to use App Builder? We've invested so much into App Studio, Power App Studio, and maybe, many organizations have as well. So why should I now, as a customer, choose to use App Builder?
Yeah,
That's the first one.
absolutely. Ken's just going right for it with all these questions. Why bother using it? Tell us about the governance. I love it. I think for App Builder, it's important to understand the landscape and persona and amount of control that's available in various tools. So I almost think about it in kind of like three categories. So you have kind of like your first category of people where it's like information workers, everyday workers, you know, broad access. And App Builder fits well there in the same way that you'd use Copilot or other agents, App Builder's in that slot. And basically what you get with App Builder is, it's a restricted amount of capabilities, but you don't really have to, worry about a lot of stuff or have a lot of skill to be able to leverage it, right? It's, you don't have to see the code, you don't have to work with it. Sharing it is as easy as sharing a document. It's very kind of like meant for everyday workers. And, that's good for a lot of like personal and team productivity cases and for a whole big net new audience that, the bar was still too high with Power Apps or Power Platform. Like that is now a good choice of tool for those folks, right? And I think the other two categories is like, all right, so we still have a huge audience of makers and folks who are more technical, who want to build more things for, departments and enterprises and broader adoption that do, more complex things, which require more control and more data access and also more responsibility and accountability, right? And so I think like where you move into like the middle one is like, all right, then, App Studio and Power Platform, that it's a good choice for those scenarios, for those people who want to build for a water scale audience, who require more
Good.
control, who require more capabilities, right? That is where I think it is. And then you kind of have the further, other audience of like, all right, developers, right? You have pro developers who want to use tools of their choice. They want to use their tools. They want to have all of the control. They want to build, things that are sweeping and, intended for complex use cases. Like the tools for those folks is, Visual Studio and so on. But I think like with the introduction, I'm not sure if you covered on the podcast before, of code apps, right? Which was announced in preview, a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago. Developers can actually bring code that they've written in other tools and host it and have it managed on the platform as well. And so kind of you have the sliding spectrum of depending on your persona, right? Like for app builder, everyday workers, anyone, studio makers, more technical, also, developers. And then you also have the complete kind of control for developers where, they're building more complex things. And I think like it's all something built on the same platform so you can manage it across the board. But for app builder, it's kind of like if you don't need that extra control and you're building something quick and you're building something, for your personal and team kind of like scope, that's kind of when you would choose app builder and why you would want it, because you don't have to necessarily worry about a lot of the other capabilities that you then have to worry about if you're building things that are more robust or like more complex rather, and intricate for kind of like that broader audience.
I now have 20 more questions. No. All right. So I'm going to revise one of my questions because what you just said made me think of something that someone asked me at the conference, and that was, "Hey, what license do I need for this?"
Yep. So for app builder, you need to have the M365 Copilot license. So that
Mhm.
means that to build the like basically that license is to access the agent. Um, to build apps in the agent, you require that license. To play the apps that are built, you require that license as well.
Mhm.
The apps are played in the agent.
And then my third and final question: how are we
Holding
thinking
you
about
to that.
accessibility for app builder? And when it's making me laugh, I want to make sure I say my question very nice and clear. We spend a lot of time making apps, flows, and everything else inside of our ecosystem very accessible to everyone, right? How are we thinking about accessibility and extending that to everyone so that everyone can make use of these brilliant tools that we're building?
To clarify, do you mean like accessibility of the app itself and that it's meeting accessibility standards, or more like how people can reach it and build with it?
I'm sorry, accessibility standards. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool. I can answer both. But for accessibility of the app, this is again one of the kind of like, I mentioned our tools and our toolkit.
Yeah.
Essentially like accessibility and checking that is one of the tools in the toolkit, and this is something that we'll have to hone and improve as we see people building more complex and different patterns.
Mhm.
We'll have to improve that, but from the start it's kind of we're using the best practices, standard libraries that come with kind of the proper structures for accessibility and how these apps will be used.
So what I'm hearing is the lessons that we've learned and things that we've done in the past, they are applicable to what we've already building, what we're building right now. So not much, different from say things that are in App Studio and so on and so forth, right? Wendy or Sean, I yield right now.
We got to
Maybe.
stop arm wrestling over questions. We've got too many for you, Emma. So, Sean, you go.
Wow. No, I appreciate it. It's good to talk again. Hey Emma, so like we've got the amazing ability to go and build agents in Microsoft Copilot Studio Lite, right? And so you kind of get a subset of features. And then when you want to build more complex agents, you can start doing this in Microsoft Copilot Studio. There's parallelisms, I think I'm saying that correctly, from App Builder over into Power Apps. And then you also talked about the next stage of like, hey, we want to do custom code and we use Visual Studio, but you also talk about code apps, right? So you've got like these abilities to blend functionality and kind of get a taste and understand what it is to move on to like the next level. Can you go into like how should organizations approach that? Like, okay, not saying that there are limits, but we've hit our limit on what we can do with App Builder. And it's time to actually start building some stuff on Power Apps, right? Because use all that greatness and all the same great governance stuff that Ken's putting out and leverage that, right? How do you convey that messaging? How do you build that type of development pipe at an organization to understand when's it time to do the handshake to more complex applications?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, that existing kind of concept of Copilot Studio Lite and moving to Copilot, like this, I think this is going to be a pattern across the platform, right? As we're seeing that for apps as well. It comes down to, different tools for different people. But sometimes you do have great successes in stuff that is built where you want it to be, more closely managed. You want it to have additional, data access or, automations or what may have you involved, which require that extra expertise and bigger tool set. And so right now, in our first week of release in Frontier, there's not a magic button to just say upgrade, but that is something that we would like to work towards because this is something that's all built on the same platform and the apps are stored in a not default separate environment. This is something in but that we will be able to light up for people is in fact like either from an individual user led motion of like, hey, like I want to go and use more stuff, help me get to my right environment to go and do that, or either from a admin led motion of, hey, I see this app builder application, like it's flagged because it has a ton of usage, like I should go check in on that and make sure there's the right support, get them to a perhaps environment that has additional rollout and secure and like ALM and other stuff to make sure that it's performing at its best. And so right now there's not a magic button, but I would see kind of like both of those motions as something that will be important for organizations.
I know we usually start with this question, so now we're going to put this toward the end of the podcast. But I'd love to understand use cases, and maybe I'll phrase it this way, Emma. I Whether it's something you've built or something that you've seen built as a result of this product, I want to know what's like the most wow problem that you've heard of the app builder solving or use case that you've seen that's just magical or that pain point that it's addressing, because I think it's so amazing to hear about the technology, but it's helpful to put it into the context of the real world use cases as well.
Yeah, I love that question. That's one of the most exciting parts I think to talk about. So I'll start with a couple of use cases that I current like I obviously use App Builder every day given my job, but it also helps me. So a couple of things. It's really for those scenarios where previously the thought of building an app is like a little bit daunting because there's a lot involved. So one is we have basically our experiment endpoint manager, right? So we have kind of like a list of all of our different experiments and the URLs to go try and capture feedback about each of them. That was spun up in, within an hour, and now our team uses it regularly just as a part of our practice, right? Like just for our team. So very, very simple scenario, but to be able to spin it up that quickly and have it, accessible to everyone in the team really quickly, it's really great. I would categorize that as kind of like, a personal or team productivity type of thing where you're tracking something and, using it together. One other kind of use case that I've used it for is almost like working with it as an ROI calculator or like pros and cons adapter, right? Like I think you can do this a lot with a core Copilot, right? Where you can ask it, hey, like give me pros, cons, give me a list. But you can build an app super quickly, right? It's just another prompt where, I had kind of like a categorization. I was able to drag and drop different stuff and work with the team to go and update and create kind of like a more visual and interactive pros and cons list and ROI calculator. So it's kind of like a different kind of category, right? Because I probably traditionally wouldn't have gone and built something like that, and pulled on a full dev team to go do it. But now that it's accessible for me and team, it's something that is able to help. We also build a bunch of fun things as well. It's quite easy to build different games, or to vote for something on lunch, or our next kind of like team learning session. All of those are kind of examples of the types of things that we've built internally, because it's only been released for like a week in customer hands at this point. We're just starting, I think, to see what folks are building and doing there. One of the ones that I saw is like somebody in their organization, in their team, they have basically a compliance checklist of different stuff that needs to be done. And so they were able to spin up a nice app to be able to go measure that and be able to go look back at that list and so on.
Emma, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this because, like you said, it just came out, but now I'm still curious. Like, what do we feel is next? What are we thinking of? I'm not asking you to give us the product roadmap, but maybe just an inside of the factory and how we think about evolving the product. How do we think this new app builder, we have so many builders now, will evolve?
So I think there's a couple different things. So first and foremost is quality, right?
Mm.
We talked about it earlier in terms of making quality apps, making sure that it's building accessible things, increasing the types of
Mhm.
experiences it can build. So kind of like that's going to be a core foundation of what we will work on, right? Because we are taking over more of the responsibility and control for how these things get created. A lot of work has to go into making sure that those are right and delightful and trusted. And so I think from in terms of an investment and what's next, there's definitely a long, unglamorous road of that
Right.
continual work, right? That's there. But the more I think some of the more exciting things that are there is, one, understanding what people want from App Builder and what things they are trying to build. Right now, as I mentioned, like App Builder works only with SharePoint data only, right? Read, write, kind of, that those types of operations. Um, However, there's a lot of other things that people might want to do inside of it as well, right? That align with the rest of M365. You may want to be able to, for example, easily fetch the manager of somebody to show them in an application, or and so on. So I think there will be an expansion of what data people can access, but we want to be very careful and diligent with introducing anything new there to make sure that it's done in a controllable and way to minimize risk. So I think it would at most be some of those other M365 capabilities to align with M365 Copilot and what it can do. Uh, we talked briefly about, upgrade paths and being able to take the app and upgrade it into Power
Yeah.
Platform. I definitely see that coming at some point as well. Um,
Yeah, that'd be
yeah,
amazing.
we're just kind of at the beginning, and it's super exciting to look forward and envision what people will do with it at this point.
Like you already answered part of what I was about to ask next, and that is, will or do we foresee maybe integration with workflows or with agent builder or anything like that? And I think, I mean, even though it's not there yet, but there might be a world where all three of these new builders may be interacting and building on top of each other to build holistic solutions for the customers. Would you agree? Or
I think that's one where we'll want to see what people go through and build to kind of determine how best to light that up if it makes sense. So I think like from today, you could go build an app and you could build a workflow that works on the data underneath the app in SharePoint. So if you have a bit of know-how, you can go and kind of light it up
Mm.
already. Whether we want to, converge the agents into, a working crew of them for people, that's something that I think will is to be determined, and we'll have to see how that would work.
I'm looking at Wendy because I see the look on her face with the
I know, and
follow-up question.
I realized that this whole episode we focused on the admin, we focused on the maker, but when you were doing the examples, you talked about you built something for your team. So are these shareable? And I should have asked this at the beginning, but um am I positioning this or thinking of this as just for myself that apps or for team apps, for organizational apps, even as we think about like the zone governance and sides, like what kinds of use cases should I be using this tool for?
Yeah, absolutely. This is very much meant for personal and team productivity. So you can share the apps. It's very easy to do so. You essentially, just like an Office document, you can copy the link, configure whether it's for people with existing access or lets, new people in your organization gain access. So you just copy that link and you can send it, to the rest of the members of your team, and it will pull up that app, playing inside of M365 Copilot. So it makes it super easy to share and build. Uh, you can just use it for yourself as well, though, right? You can, if you need that additional interaction or working with stuff, you can build those things all on your own to help build apps that help you. But they're also easily shareable as well.
Sorry, I had to find my unmute button. It's been so long. Um,
Some of us got a lot of jokes this morning with us.
I'm gonna take the mic when I can. Hey,
Sean and I are wrestling over here for the questions.
it's true. She's stronger than she looks. So Emma, like, there's obviously this came out in Frontier, like at the time of recording. And there's been some amazing content that's come out from Microsoft and from our MVPs in the community. It's like been great to see. There's some fantastic use cases in there. How, besides that, like, how else should somebody get started here? Right? Like, how do I learn more so I can make sure that I'm building the best of what's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a bunch of content, as you mentioned, available online. There's also a bunch of documentation available from Microsoft as well. One other thing is that we have, kind of some default prompts that are available when you go and access the agent. So you can, if you don't quite have a thought around what you might build, you can try out one of those and see how it goes. I would also say one other kind of tip I would give is it's easy to work with Copilot first, right? So you're already in Copilot. You could say, like, hey, like, I'm thinking of building an app. Like, can you go have a look at, my work content and what I've done and give me some suggestions, right? And so you can get some suggestions and ideas that way, which then you can take and go build an app builder.
Very cool.
To
Well, we're
clarify,
excited.
sorry,
Oh,
to
oh
clarify,
no.
suggestions on I know, sorry. Suggestions on what to build or suggestions on how to build it?
Let me jump in
Both.
there with that one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had that same question asked to me at the conference. And what I said was I often use Copilot to mature my ideas a lot, where I will just have a conversation with it and tell it, for example, hey, I'm thinking about um Wendy, you mentioning zone strategy. Hey, I'm thinking about
Mhm.
revising the zone strategy. Could you help me build an application in which I can, run ideas or, run a SWOT analysis or do these types of things with it, right? And it would um, essentially build the prompts for me inside of there, right? In Copilot, not within what Emma's describing as app builder inside of there. So from that, then I would, play with that a little bit and get that to how I would want it. And then I would take that and use that inside of App Builder and then have that build the app for me.
So you find you're thinking first and then you're taking it over to the application.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Emma, I
Got it.
cut the line.
Sorry, Sean.
No,
Thank you for letting
I
me
think
clarify.
I think that's, Ken, you nailed it exactly. Like you you're already in Copilot, which has great kind of like collaborative thinking abilities with these models. And so you can leverage that as well, right? And one of
Right.
the things that's, useful too is that you can go and create content from Copilot, right? So if you go and you're like, hey, like Copilot, help me think of an app, help me write a spec, help me,
Right.
envision what this should do. You can also, export that as a Word doc and put it directly into into App Builder as well, right? So kind of like with the suite of Office productivity and leveraging all of Copilot, like you can, gain new ideas for what you should build. You can refine what types of things you'd want to be included inside of those applications as well.
That's awesome. Hey, everybody, like, I guess the call to action here is like, start building, like, make things, refine them, make amazing things. And then also, we want to know about it. So, like, tag us on LinkedIn. We have a forward deployed page, right? Send us comments. When you see the videos come up and the advertisements for this, like, message us. We're super curious about what you're making because we love it and we think it's fantastic. Emmett, thank you so much for joining us. This was a ton of information on something that's really cool that just recently came out. And so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more coming out
Right.
in the future. So we can't wait to have you back on again for the third time. It's going to be awesome. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here and answer all the questions that y'all fought over.
Never happens.
Always a
Never.
pleasure.
Cool.